Jonathan Auxier, aka the Krabby Crab film videographer, talks about his new novel with Abrams, The Night Gardener, in Philadelphia at the ALA Midwinter meeting. Enjoy.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited, and I figured a way to kick things off would be just by reading a little excerpt to give you a sense of the tone and feel of the book. I haven't really read this book aloud in front of people, so it's a little nerve-wracking, but we're going to go for it. The calendar said early March, but the smell in the air said late October. A crisp sun shone over Cellar Hollow, melting the final bits of ice from the bare trees. Steam rose from the soil like a phantom, carrying with it a whisper of autumn smoke that had been lying dormant in the frosty underground. Squinting through the trees, you could just make out one winding path that ran from the village all the way to the woods in the south. People seldom traveled in that direction, but on this March morning that felt like October, a horse and cart rattled down the road. It was a fish cart with a broken back wheel and no fish. Riding atop the bench were two children, a girl and a boy, both with striking red hair. The girl was named Molly, and the boy, her brother, was Kip. And they were riding to their deaths. So this thus begins The Night Gardener, which is this creepy story of these two children, Molly and Kip, who have actually fled Ireland in the mid-19th century. They're trying to escape and survive the Great Famine that was happening, and in their desperation, they end up taking work in this crumbling English manor house that's in the middle of nowhere. And at first, this job, which seems like this just amazing opportunity, all of a sudden it starts seeming like a slightly stranger thing, and there are these little mysteries that are stacking up. And the first thing they notice is that the family living in this house, they're all very pale and sickly, and they seem to be getting more and more sick by the day. And even stranger than that is the tree, because this house isn't just by itself in the woods. It's actually built right up against this enormous, gnarled, ancient tree. And they're almost built as one, and the tree is growing straight through the walls, and its roots are pushing right through the floors. And what they discover is that this is by far no ordinary tree, because this tree can actually grant you your heart's desires, but only at a very deadly price. This book was inspired by a lot of great kind of 19th century ghost stories and writers like Washington Irving and Henry James. But for me, it really originally sparked, as all my stories do, when I was I doodle in journals a lot, and I draw these little sloppy little pictures. And every story I've ever written has kind of started as a little sketch. And one time, several years ago, I was all of a sudden drew a picture of this girl, Molly, about 14 years old, who wakes up in this cold basement like a servant's quarters, and there's this sound around her. It's wind swirling around her, and there are dry leaves in her room, even though her door is closed. The leaves are swirling around her like snow. And all of a sudden, when she listens in the darkness, she can hear somewhere above her the slow, heavy sound of footsteps. And she can tell, even without knowing why, that these footsteps are somehow wrong, somehow not human. And my idea for this character in this moment, that's not a hugely original moment, but for me it like clicked into place, because I knew at once what I wanted to tell about this girl. Because if that were happening to me when I was a kid, I would have been terrified. I was a huge fraidy cat my whole life, and I would have like pulled the covers over my head and wished it weren't so. But I knew I wanted to write a character who was the opposite of that. I wanted someone like Molly who had been raised differently, and if she suspected there was a monster under her bed, she wouldn't hide under the covers. She'd get down on her hands and knees and double check to see if there really was a monster, and if she was lucky enough to find one, she would give it a blanket and a bowl of warm milk so it wouldn't catch cold. In short, I wanted to create a character who absolutely loved stories, who wanted to shape the world with their imagination and wanted to see magical things around every corner. And as soon as I sort of started, building that character, I realized what I wanted to do was I wanted to put her in a situation where all of that longing for impossible things suddenly are confronted by the reality that there is something magical and something very special and something beyond her imagination that's right in front of her. But instead of being this glamorous, wonderful thing, it's actually very frightening. And at its core, The Night Gardener, I guess, is this story about the power of storytelling. And why do we tell stories, and what can they do for us, and how can they help us against the creepier, darker realities of the world? So this is the book. It's coming out this May. I had a lot of fun writing it, and I hope people will enjoy reading it. Thanks.
Once again, that was Jonathan Auxier reading from and talking about his new book, The Night Gardener. I'm Ed Spicer. Thanks for stopping by. Bye.